Forget the myth of an untouched wilderness. The heart of North America wasn't some endless forest waiting politely for Europeans to discover it. No, it was already buzzing, alive, and full of cities. Yes, actual cities, with neighborhoods, temples, sports fields, and more corn than you'll ever want to imagine. And then they disappeared. Quietly, strangely, leaving behind enormous mounds of earth like giant punctuation marks in the landscape. Dim the lights, settle in, and let's walk through one of the strangest chapters of the continent's forgotten past. You're not just a tourist here, you're a resident. And your neighbors? They live in a city bigger than London at the time. Congratulations. You've arrived in the Mississippi Valley, circa 1100 AD. You wake up to the sound of people. Always people. The hum of voices, the creak of wooden tools, the occasional baby screaming like the world has ended. This is the soundtrack of your life. Forget about morning solitude, because you live in Cahokia, the largest city north of Mexico, where peace and quiet are about as common as soap. You roll off a mat stuffed with reeds, stretching your back on a packed earth floor. The air smells like smoke, sweat, and wet clay. Not exactly fresh linen and lavender, but hey, it could be worse. At least your roof hasn't collapsed yet. Step outside, and there it is, the sprawl of a metropolis. Thousands of houses packed together like little wooden matchboxes, narrow paths twisting between them, the ground worn down by thousands of bare feet just like yours. And looming above it all, the Great Mound, Monk's Mound, as future archaeologists will call it. But to you, it's just the center of the universe. Imagine a pyramid. Now flatten it. Cover it in grass. Make it wider than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's what you're staring at. On top sits a massive wooden building, the home of someone far more important than you. Spoiler alert, it's not your house. You join the river of bodies moving through the city, merchants yelling about baskets of squash, children darting between legs, sticky with who knows what, dogs everywhere small, yappy, and probably plotting against you. You can hear the thump of drums in the distance, where someone is rehearsing for a ceremony you're not invited to, because of course you're not. Cahokia in its prime is home to at least 20,000 people, maybe more. For context, London, at the same time, around 15,000. That's right, you're basically living in medieval Manhattan, except your skyscrapers are made of dirt and your commute involves dodging chickens. The fields around the city stretch for miles, full of corn, beans, and squash. You'd think all that food means you eat well. You don't. Your diet is corn. Corn boiled, corn roasted, corn mashed, corn that stares back at you in your dreams. Don't even think about variety. Meat is rare unless you're lucky enough to catch a fish or sneak some venison. And forget about dessert. The only sweet thing you'll taste is if you happen to trip and fall into a patch of wild berries. But you don't complain out loud. Complaining is for people who want extra work assigned to them. Instead, you nod, smile, and pretend you're thrilled about another day of hauling, digging, and pretending to understand what the priests are chanting about. Speaking of priests, religion is everywhere. The mounds aren't just piles of dirt. They're sacred. Each one has a purpose, a meaning, a layer of ritual buried under every layer of soil. You might not understand it all, but you know enough. Don't step where you're not supposed to. Don't ask questions when someone higher up tells you to kneel. And don't, under any circumstances, joke about the sun. Unless you like the idea of being publicly humiliated, or worse. And here's the thing. You're not special. In Cahokia, you're just another body moving through the crowd. But the city itself? It's special. Bigger than any settlement this side of Mexico. A center of trade, culture, and ceremony. A place that outsiders travel hundreds of miles to see. And you're living in the middle of it, whether you like it or not. The irony? Someday, centuries later, people will stare at the grass-covered mounds and wonder who built them. They'll invent myths about a lost race. because apparently it's easier to imagine aliens with shovels than to believe your ancestors could organize themselves into building a city. But right now, as you look up at the Great Mound and squint against the rising sun, there's nothing mysterious about it. It's just home. And the day has only begun. The city doesn't run on good vibes. It runs on backs, yours included. You're not a noble, not a priest, not even one of the lucky few who get to sit in the shade and tally grain. You're labor, which means, as the sun climbs, so do you. And today, like most days, you're being told to move dirt. Congratulations, you're a cog in one of the largest construction projects in pre-Columbian America. Those enormous mounds that define your skyline, they didn't build themselves. No, it's thousands of people just like you, shuffling baskets of soil one load at a time. Forget pulleys, cranes, or wheels. You've got your arms, your legs, and a woven basket that digs into your shoulders. It's a glamorous life. Truly. You walk in line with the others, scooping earth from one pit, dumping it where someone points, and then doing it again, and again, and again. If you were hoping for variety, bad news. The only change of pace is when the dirt turns to mud and your feet sink ankle deep. The supervisors hover nearby, sticks in hand, making sure you don't forget how to work. Not that you would dare. Falling behind means humiliation at best, punishment at worst. And punishment in Cahokia isn't subtle. You'll be made an example of, in front of everyone. The irony is that you know this mound will outlive you. Centuries from now, people will still see the shape you're helping to raise. But will they know your name? Of course not. Your sweat, your aches, your broken nails anonymous, swallowed up by the dirt. Now, let's talk about class. Because yes, there is one. And spoiler, you're at the bottom. The city's elite live differently. Their houses are bigger, closer to the central plaza, with better roofs and sturdier walls. They eat more meat. They wear ornaments carved from shells brought in from the Gulf, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from who knows where. Trade reaches farther than you can imagine, and somehow, none of it ends up in your hut. Meanwhile, you've got corn mush again. Maybe, if the gods are smiling, a sliver of fish. And if you're really lucky, a festival where the nobles throw food to the crowd like crumbs to pigeons. Religion and power here are married. The chief, more than just a leader, claims a connection to the cosmos. He doesn't just rule, he radiates divine authority. Which means when he says, dig, you don't argue, you die. When he says kneel, you drop like a sack of grain. And when he says, the city needs another mound, congratulations, you've just been signed up for months of back-breaking labor. There are moments, carrying yet another load of dirt, where you wonder, what's the point? You know better than to voice it, but the thought gnaws at you. The mounds grow taller, the temples more elaborate, the rituals more complex. And yet, your hut looks the same as it did last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. Still, there's a strange pride in the work. You look up at the rising slope of Monk's Mound, the way it swallows the sky, and you think, maybe this is worth it. Maybe this is your piece of immortality. Not your name, not your face, but the dirt under your nails becoming something greater. And then your basket handle snaps, spilling soil at your feet. The overseer glares. Pride evaporates, you pick up the pieces, and start again. By midday, the sun is brutal. Your back aches, your throat is dry, and every step feels heavier. You wipe sweat from your eyes and glance toward the river, its muddy waters glinting in the light. You imagine diving in, floating away, leaving it all behind. But you don't. Nobody does. The city is a gravity well. It pulls you back, always back. And as the drums echo from the plaza, signaling yet another ritual you're not part of, you realize something. Your life isn't about choice. It's about rhythm. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. No toilet? No soap. No sense of dignity. Welcome to the labor class of Cahokia. And yes, it only gets worse. The drums are what drag you there. Low, steady, like a heartbeat you can't escape. You follow the crowd toward the plaza. Because, in Cahokia, when everyone moves in one direction, you don't ask questions, you move. The air is heavy with smoke. Cedar and sweetgrass burn in clay pots, their fragrance trying and failing to cover the stench of too many people packed into one place. Sweat, dirt, fish guts, damp hides. Congratulations! You've discovered what happens when deodorant won't be invented for another 900 years. At the center of it all, the priests stand robed in feathers, their faces painted in harsh reds and blacks. They move slowly, deliberately, as if the weight of the cosmos rests on their shoulders. Maybe it does. Or maybe they're just really enjoying the fact that thousands of people are staring at them in silence. You don't know the full script of what's happening. It's not for you to know. That's reserved for the elite, the initiated, the people with more ornaments on their chests than food in their bellies. All you know is that the sun is climbing in the sky, and the ceremony is meant to keep it happy. Because if the sun gets unhappy, you get famine, death, and a lot less corn mush to complain about. There's chanting, rhythmic and strange. The sound rolls over the plaza like a wave, words you half understand. They speak of cycles, birth, death, rebirth. The endless turning of time, you wake up to another day. But today feels different. Not because the sun has changed, or the mounds have shifted, but because the city itself seems to be watching. Every mound, every plaza, every carefully arranged wooden structure reflects an order far older and stranger than anything you were taught as a child. The people of Cahokia don't just live here, they live with the world. The city is aligned to the sun, the moon, the stars. Pathways run straight toward the cardinal directions. Mounds form geometric patterns that make your head spin if you think about them too long. And you try not to. Thinking too much about alignment, balance, and the cosmos tends to make you dizzy, and occasionally, that's a luxury you can't afford. The world, according to Cahokia, is a place where everything has meaning. The river is more than water. It's life, danger, and trade, all in one. The forests aren't just trees. They're providers of food, fuel, and timber. The wind carries news and omens, and the sun's position in the sky dictates the rhythm of work, ceremony, and survival. Ignore it, and the city will remind you in unpleasant ways. You follow the crowd to the plaza, noting how every movement is choreographed, whether anyone realizes it or not. Children run in patterns your eyes can't quite trace. Merchants arrange their goods in specific sequences. Priests and nobles move as if they are spokes in a wheel you cannot see, and yet the wheel's rotation affects every life. You are a cog in the machinery, and the machinery is cosmic. Try not to think too hard about it, it's exhausting. Houses line the streets with deliberate spacing, mounds rise like punctuation marks, and wooden posts mark sacred spots. There are places where you are forbidden to tread, and places where stepping incorrectly could mean humiliation, or worse. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you get lucky. Luck is a currency just as valuable as corn. The city is also an observatory. Wooden posts, large circles of stones, and elevated platforms allow people to track celestial events. Eclipses, solstices, and equinoxes are read not as mere natural phenomena, but as messages from the gods. You don't understand all of it, but you know enough to respect it, or to feign understanding. Pretending you grasp the meaning keeps you alive. And while this sounds grand, the reality is complicated. People die, crops fail, and small mistakes have huge consequences. You watch as the priests mark the shadow of a post on the longest day of summer, muttering numbers and signs, and you wonder if the gods actually notice, or if humans just like rituals. Then you remember the last time the gods did notice, and a festival ended with a sacrifice, and you decide it's safer to assume they do. The world, according to Cahokia, is layered. Not just earth upon earth in the mounds, but ideas upon ideas, Every action, every gesture, every mound, and every basket of corn contributes to the delicate balance of life. Humans, animals, plants, and spirits all interact in a complex, invisible web. You don't see it all, but sometimes you feel it, like a cold draft slipping between your ribs. And yet, life presses on. Corn must be planted, baskets carried, drums beaten. The cosmic order doesn't stop for hunger, fatigue, or doubt. You move in rhythm with the city, a small, expendable part of a design far larger than yourself. You breathe in the smoke from ceremonial fires, feel the weight of the sun overhead, and for a moment, you sense that maybe the city does matter. Maybe the rituals, the alignments, the sacrifices they are more than superstition. Or maybe not. Either way, the universe doesn't pause to explain. It hums along, indifferent to your questions. And neither does Cahokia. So you keep moving. You keep planting. You keep bowing to shadows, stars, and gods. And you learn slowly that the world of Cahokia is not built for comfort, not built for fairness, not even built for happiness. It is built for order. And survival within that order is an achievement in itself. Because in Cahokia, understanding the world is optional. Staying alive in it is mandatory. You've noticed by now that Cahokia isn't just a city. It's a hierarchy in motion, a delicate choreography of authority, and your life is defined by your place in it. You are near the bottom, naturally. The priests and the chief occupy the very top, and their power is something you feel even before you see it. The chief is a figure of awe, wrapped in feathers and copper ornaments, standing taller than most men, not just in stature, but in influence. He does not just rule, he embodies the city's connection to the cosmos. When he speaks, it is law, prophecy, and sermon rolled into one. People move aside without thinking, and you, yes, you bend instinctively. Not because you respect him, though maybe a little, but because defiance here is a fast track to humiliation or worse. And then there are the priests. Their authority is subtler, more pervasive, and infinitely scarier. They interpret the will of the gods, decide the timing of festivals, and dictate who lives and who might be offered as a sacrifice. They know things. Names, numbers, omens, secrets. And they can ruin you quietly with a word or a ritual gesture. You avoid their gaze when possible. Curiosity is dangerous. Power in Cahokia is both visible and invisible. The chief lives atop the Great Mound, a literal and symbolic elevation, and the priests perform ceremonies that ripple through every corner of the city. They control labor, food distribution, and even the timing of work versus rest. You may carry the baskets of dirt, but the rhythm of your labor is dictated from above. You've also noticed that this power has layers. The chief relies on the priests to maintain cosmic legitimacy. The priests rely on the chief to enforce earthly authority. And then there's the council of nobles elites who control trade, land, and influence, subtly reinforcing the hierarchy while staying out of the way of divine matters. You are lucky if one of them notices you at all. Still, you can't ignore the perks of being close to power. Nobles enjoy better houses, fancier ornaments, and of course, better food. Festivals grant them influence as well as indulgence. They sit in the shade while the masses toil, and you can't help but notice the absurdity of it all. How a handful of people can dictate the lives of thousands, shaping the city's destiny while your fate is carried in a basket on your back. Religion and politics here are inseparable. The chief is a secular leader, yes, but he gains legitimacy by claiming connection to the heavens. Priests perform rituals that reinforce his authority. Disobedience is framed as sacrilege. Questioning them is dangerous not because they are tyrants, but because their power is woven into the fabric of daily life. To challenge them is to challenge the cosmos itself. And yet, it's oddly mesmerizing. Watching a ceremony, you can almost feel the city's heartbeat, sense the invisible forces that bind people together. Fear, yes, but also awe, and a grudging respect for how efficiently a system can operate when everyone knows their place and the consequences of stepping out of line. Of course, you're not immune to doubt. You see the priests whispering to each other, the nobles exchanging glances, and sometimes you catch a flash of human frailty behind the ceremonial mask. Power is absolute only until someone wields it carelessly. And in Cahokia, that happens more often than you'd like to think. But for now, you do as you're told. You carry the baskets, you bow when you must, you feign understanding of rituals that are only partially explained to you. You survive. You endure. You participate in a system that is both brutal and brilliantly ordered, because in Cahokia, power is omnipresent, visible in the mounds, audible in the drums, and tangible in every basket you lift. And if you want to stay alive, if you want to see another sunrise, you keep your head down, your hands busy, and your curiosity tempered. The chief and priests may seem untouchable. They may dictate your life from sunrise to sunset. But remember this, even the highest mound is built one basket of dirt at a time, and you, yes, you are the one carrying it. You walk past another mound, and for a moment, you pause. Not because it's particularly beautiful, though the rising shape of earth against the sky has its own majesty. No, you pause because it demands attention. These aren't hills. They aren't mere landscaping. These are sacred, deliberate, eternal, or at least that's the idea. The mounds of Cahokia are the city's backbone, its calendar, its altar, its fortress, and its message to the gods. Each one was built by hands like yours, by backs aching, by sweat soaking the earth. One basket of dirt at a time, layer upon layer, creating pyramids of mud and memory. You've carried soil to these very mounds, sometimes wondering why the effort matters, and yet you keep going. Because the mound will outlive you, whether you like it or not. Some mounds are flat on top, large enough to hold buildings. Others rise to spires that scrape the sky. The Great Mound, Monk's Mound, is the centerpiece, but the surrounding smaller mounds form patterns, lines, circles, terraces aligned to the sun, the moon, or the cardinal directions. The city itself is a map of the cosmos, and these mounds are the punctuation marks. Ignore them at your peril, cross their boundaries uninvited, and you might be cursed, scolded, or worse. You don't fully understand all of it, and that's okay. You never need to. You know the rituals, offerings on top, ceremonies around the base, burials within, and the occasional sacrifice tucked beneath layers of soil. That's the hierarchy of meaning. Some mounds are homes for nobles, others for priests, and some for the dead. The mounds remember what the people do not. The act of building a mound is itself sacred. Every basket carried, every life resumes its relentless rhythm. Corn must still be planted, baskets of soil must still be carried, and ceremonies must still be observed. But the memory of laughter lingers, a faint rebellion tucked into your chest. It's small, temporary, and almost certainly inconsequential, but it's yours. And in Cahokia, holding on to small joys is as vital as hauling a basket of dirt to the top of a sacred mound. Because in a city defined by order, hierarchy, and ritual, play is the quietest act of defiance. And sometimes, it's the only thing that keeps you human. You think Cahokia ends at its mounds, plazas, and cornfields? Think again. The city thrives because it is connected, intertwined with a vast network of trade that stretches farther than you can imagine. Traders arrive from rivers far away, from forests, mountains, and plains, bringing goods that seem almost magical in their rarity. You watch them arrive, canoes gliding up the Mississippi like sleek, dark shadows. Their cargo is as diverse as it is exotic. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, mica from distant quarries, obsidian from rocky highlands. Each item is a story, a symbol of status, and a tool for survival. You carry baskets of earth to the mounds, but someone else is moving shiny stones that can command respect or fear. Trade here is both practical and political. Goods aren't just exchanged for food or tools, they're markers of influence. Nobles and priests collect rare items to display their power, decorating houses, ceremonial spaces, and even clothing. A copper bracelet or a shell necklace isn't just ornamentation. It's a signal. I am connected, I am important, and I control what others cannot reach. And you marvel silently, knowing that your status guarantees little access to these luxuries. Markets bustle with energy. Stalls line the pathways, goods laid out for anyone with the courage to barter. You see baskets of corn traded for copper beads, pottery exchanged for freshwater pearls, smoked fish swapped for obsidian. Voices rise in negotiation, punctuated by laughter, threats, and the occasional sharp word. It's a theater of commerce, and you are both participant and observer, learning the rules without anyone spelling them out. The river itself is the lifeline. Canoes carry traders upstream and downstream, moving goods and news with equal speed. You've noticed that information flows just as rapidly as commodities. A distant raid, a new chief's decree, a failed harvest, all can travel faster than your own feet. In Cahokia, knowing something before it happens can make the difference between survival and misfortune. Trade isn't always peaceful. Rival cities, jealous chiefs, and opportunistic raiders lurk beyond the horizon. Sometimes goods arrive late, or not at all, threatening famine, discontent, and unrest. The elites calculate risk, and you, carrying your daily burdens, simply observe the consequences when plans fail. The stakes are high, even for things as simple as a piece of shell. And yet, trade also brings marvels. You've seen tools sharper than anything you can craft, ornaments that glint in sunlight, and exotic foods that challenge the monotony of corn and beans. Sometimes, a trader leaves a trinket behind, a small, shiny gift that ends up in the hands of someone like you. It is rare. It is fleeting. And for a moment, it is exhilarating. Trade shapes the city as much as labor or ritual. It defines who has influence, who is respected, and who is expendable. Nobles and priests rise through their ability to control and access these networks. The commoners survive by participating, observing, and sometimes stealing or negotiating what they can. Everything is connected. Nothing exists in isolation. Even your basket of soil is part of a larger system. And while trade is vital, it is also precarious. A flood, a raid, or a spoiled shipment can ripple through the city, leaving hunger, resentment, or tension in its wake. You've seen arguments flare into fights. You've seen nobles berate traders for delayed goods. And you've seen ordinary people caught in the crossfire, wishing the world were simpler, quieter, and far less dependent on faraway canoes. Still, Cahokia thrives. It grows. It attracts outsiders, wealth, ideas, and attention. And as you walk the marketplace, hearing voices shout, bargainers haggle, and rivers lap against the shore, you can't help but notice. The city is alive not just because of mounds or rituals, but because of its connections, because of trade, because of people daring to reach beyond their own borders. And you? You are just another witness, another cog, but perhaps one who notices the way the world stretches outward from this city of dirt, sweat, and ambition. Because in Cahokia, the world is bigger than the mounds, and yet the mounds themselves shape the world. You're hauling dirt, as usual, when the murmurs start. At first, you ignore them. Rumors travel faster than reality in Cahokia, but soon the whispers reach your ears. Foreigners have arrived. Canoes from far-off rivers, travelers from lands you've only glimpsed in passing. People talk about their strange clothing, odd accents, and unfamiliar ways. Curiosity spreads like wildfire. You follow the crowd to the riverbank, carrying your basket for reasons you pretend are important. The visitors are indeed strange. Their skin, clothing, and tools mark them as outsiders. They speak languages that sound like nothing you've heard, gestures that are unfamiliar, faces that seem almost alien against the backdrop of Cahokia. And yet, they're human like you. Like everyone here, just different. The visitors bring gifts, goods, or rumors. Rare stones, shells, or decorative items that even the city's traders find intriguing. And they bring stories of distant places, stories that feel like fables because they are so far removed from your everyday life of labor and ritual. You listen, fascinated, even though you know better than to let your awe show too openly. Awe is dangerous when you're expendable. Interaction is a delicate dance. Nobles and priests approach the visitors with courtesy and ceremony, exchanging greetings, inspecting gifts, and asserting dominance subtly. The foreigners must be impressed, or at least made to feel they are. The balance of power is clear. You, laborer, remain at the periphery, observing, carrying, and learning quietly. Survival depends on discretion. And yet, visitors change the rhythm of the city. New goods circulate, ideas spread, and sometimes conflicts ignite. There's always tension in the air when outsiders arrive. Will they be allies or threats? Will they obey the city's rules or disrupt the careful balance of power? You notice the guards at the palisades watching closer, the traders adjusting their prices, the priests murmuring rituals to welcome or protect against them. Sometimes the foreigners are entertainers, showing dances or games unfamiliar to Cahokians. Sometimes they are scholars or observers, curious about the mounds, the rituals, and the social order. And sometimes they are just another group of humans trying to survive, unaware of the invisible rules that dictate life here. You've learned to read these situations carefully, because misjudgment can be fatal, even if the threat seems subtle. You notice how the children stare, mouths open, and how elders whisper to each other, assessing whether the visitors are beneficial or dangerous. You notice how laborers like yourself pause in their work, glancing toward the river, imagining what it would be like to travel beyond the city, to see the lands these foreigners come from. And then reality reasserts itself. Baskets of dirt don't carry themselves, and the mounds will not build themselves. Adventure waits for no one in Cahokia. Visitors also bring opportunity. Rare goods trickle down through barters, bribes, or overlooked items. A piece of shell might find its way to someone like you, if you're lucky. A story might inspire cleverness or caution. Even a small gesture, a smile, a nod, a hidden piece of corn can feel like treasure. You learn that survival in a city like this isn't just about labor. It's about observation, timing, and subtlety. And as the visitors depart, drifting downriver in their strange canoes, the city resumes its rhythm. Work continues, ceremonies proceed, mounds rise higher, and the river laps against the banks as if nothing happened. But the memory of the outsiders lingers. You've glimpsed a world beyond Cahokia, and it both excites and terrifies you. Because the world is bigger than the mounds, bigger than the cornfields, bigger even than the sacred rituals that dominate your daily life. You return to your labor, carrying soil to the next mound. But a small seed of curiosity takes root. One day, maybe, you wonder, someone will leave this city for lands unknown. And you can't help but imagine what stories you would bring back. Because in Cahokia, life is contained by mounds and rivers, by rituals and hierarchies. But the world bigger, unpredictable, and strange exists just beyond the horizon. You wake up before sunrise, muscles aching from yesterday's labor, and immediately realize the city never rests. Cahokia is expanding, evolving, consuming human energy, like a beast with an insatiable appetite. Every day, someone somewhere is hauling baskets of soil, laying timber, stacking stones, or carving wood. And you're part of it. Congratulations. The city is booming. New mounds rise from the earth like slow-moving volcanoes. Plazas expand, and wooden structures stretch taller than ever. Paths are cleared, fences repaired, and workshops crowded with artisans, their hands raw, their tools dulling, their energy constant. You can almost hear the city groaning as it grows. And the irony is delicious. Humans build monuments to order, yet the process itself is chaos. Labor is relentless. You carry basket after basket, soil compacted into lumps here. Education in Cahokia is subtle. There are no formal schools for most, though priests and nobles may offer instruction in ritual, astronomy, and governance. Ordinary children learn through participation, carrying, observing, imitating, and internalizing patterns of labor and obedience. You watch as a child mimics your motions, struggling to lift a small basket of dirt, face red with effort, and you remember how quickly skill becomes survival. Death touches children too, and the lesson is brutal. Illness, accidents, or misfortune claim many before adolescence. Families mourn quietly, sometimes ritually, sometimes simply in shared grief. It teaches you that life here is precarious from the very start. Children grow up with this knowledge, aware that even innocence is fleeting. Despite hardship, there are small joys: shared meals of corn, berries, or fish, whispered stories under thatched roofs, games that stretch into twilight. Children adapt. They learn to take delight where they can, to find freedom in alleyways, in the fields, or under the shade of mounds. And their laughter, echoing across the city, is perhaps the only sound that competes with the constant thrum of labor and ceremony. By observing children, you understand the city differently. They reveal both continuity and change, the persistence of families, the adaptation to hierarchy, the endurance of human curiosity and play. They are the living memory of Cahokia, the carriers of tradition, and the future of the city. And as you watch a child dart between huts, balancing a tiny basket of soil, you realize that the next generation will inherit this vast, demanding, awe-inspiring, exhausting city. Some will survive, some will struggle, and some will be remembered only in whispers. But all will shape Cahokia in ways both visible and hidden. Because in a city built on mounds, ritual, and hierarchy, children are both fragile and vital, the living pulse of what has been and what is yet to come. You notice them first in the alleys, by the fires, and in the fields. Women of Cahokia move with a rhythm dictated by work, family, and survival. They are everywhere visible, essential, and yet often invisible to the hierarchy that dominates the city. Your respect, if it exists, comes from observation, because their labor keeps the city alive in ways as fundamental as the mounds themselves. Women rise early, tending children, preparing food, and maintaining households. Corn must be ground, beans sorted, and meat smoked or cooked over fires that never go out. Water is drawn from the river, wood gathered for fuel, and huts repaired before the sun climbs too high. Each day is endless, a rhythm without pause, punctuated only by the small relief of finished chores or fleeting laughter. You can almost hear their sighs in unison with the wind through the mounds. Their work is both practical and symbolic. Food is more than sustenance. It's a reflection of family, social standing, and respect for the gods. A poorly prepared meal can mean nothing more than hunger, but in the city's delicate hierarchy, it can ripple outward, causing whispers, judgment, or even blame from those above. You carry baskets, toil under the sun, but they manage survival in ways less visible yet just as critical. Women are also educators. They teach children not just survival skills but social norms. How to bow, when to speak, which paths to avoid, which rituals matter, and how to navigate authority. Through example, patience, and insistence, they mold the next generation of laborers, artisans, and ritual participants. Their influence is subtle, pervasive, and absolutely essential. Trade and craft are also part of their domain. Women weave mats, prepare clothing, fashion pottery, and manage domestic trade. Their work touches the daily lives of everyone in the neighborhood, and often beyond. You might pass by a woman negotiating a small exchange of corn for shells, noting how effortlessly she balances survival and negotiation, command and patience. The skill is impressive, and mostly invisible to the elites who count power in copper and mounds. But life for women is never without pressure. Social expectations, ritual obligations, and family responsibilities weigh constantly. The hierarchy is never forgiving. Women who fail, who cannot provide, who misstep in ritual, who raise children, inadequately face consequences that range from gossip to genuine danger. Survival requires constant awareness, precision, and endurance. And yet, they endure. Always. Community is essential. Women lean on each other, sharing advice, food, childcare, and work. Small networks form, quietly powerful, creating resilience that the city's rigid hierarchies cannot easily touch. You watch the exchange of whispered warnings, shared water, and secret smiles. It's subtle, but it's how life continues when the mounds and rituals dominate the landscape. Women also participate in ceremonies, sometimes visibly, sometimes behind the scenes. Their labor supports priests, rituals, and the construction of sacred spaces. They carry baskets of offerings, prepare ceremonial foods, and assist in rites that you may never fully understand. Their devotion is practical, as well as spiritual, a blend of survival, faith, and social navigation. You notice, sometimes, a fleeting moment of rebellion, a glance that defies authority, a whispered joke, a child allowed to break a rule under their watch. It's tiny, almost invisible, but it reminds you that even under a rigid hierarchy, life pulses with subtle resistance. And as the sun sets over the mounds, casting long shadows over the city, you realize that Cahokia would collapse without women. The mounds might still rise, the corn might grow, and the ceremonies might continue, but the delicate network of daily survival, education, and labor, the invisible backbone of the city, rests largely on their shoulders. Because in Cahokia, women are both ordinary and extraordinary, enduring the world's weight while keeping it alive, and quietly shaping every generation that comes after them. You wake before dawn, not because the city demands it, but because the drums and horns announce it. A festival is about to begin. In Cahokia, life is measured not only in work and labor, but in the rhythm of ceremonies. Grand, terrifying, awe-inspiring, and exhausting all at once. And you, whether you want to or not, are part of it. The plaza fills with people, your footsteps crunching on packed earth alongside hundreds of others. Smoke from fires curls into the cold morning air. Children are herded into rows. Elders take their places, and nobles ascend platforms, their feathered regalia shimmering in the weak sunlight. Priests, as always, carry an aura of authority that makes your stomach tighten. Today, like every festival, is a reminder. The city exists because people believe it must. Ceremonies vary, but the purpose is always the same: to honor the gods, reinforce hierarchy, and maintain cosmic balance. You see, offerings laid meticulously atop mounds, food, tools, shells, and sometimes animals. The rituals are choreographed, every motion calculated to please the unseen powers, and every misstep, whether deliberate or accidental, can be interpreted as an omen. You try not to breathe too loudly. Drums beat, horns blare, and chants rise in unison. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost soporific, yet carries a weight that presses on your chest. You notice how the priests move, how their gestures guide the crowd, and how the nobility nod imperceptibly at signs of compliance. The entire city seems to pulse with coordinated energy, as if the very air knows the order and obeys it. Festivals also involve games, competitions, and displays of skill. Wrestlers, runners, and archers perform for approval, prestige, and sometimes reward. You watch a young hunter impress a noble by striking a target with uncanny precision, and you feel a mixture of admiration and dread. Admiration because skill is beautiful, dread because failure carries shame and sometimes more severe consequences. Offerings are made not just on mounds, but in hidden spaces. Women carry baskets filled with corn, fish, and crafted goods, placing them at altars or near sacred posts. Children participate as well, handing small tokens, learning the intricate choreography of respect, obedience, and devotion. You hand off your own basket, feeling the ritual weight press heavier than the soil inside. Sacrifices, while rare, are always anticipated with tense fascination. They are reminders of mortality, cosmic balance, and human expendability. The crowd watches, silent or murmuring, understanding that these acts are both terrible and essential, or at least that is what they are taught to believe. You watch too, heart racing, palms slick with sweat, silently reminding yourself that this is life, this is survival, and curiosity may not save you here. Food, music, and storytelling follow the ritual's conclusion. Smoke thickens, fires crackle, and the city celebrates survival, bounty, and divine favor. You might share a simple meal, exchanging smiles or whispered words with neighbors. For a fleeting moment, the hierarchy, the labor, and the fear of the gods fade, and the human pulse emerges. Laughter, chatter, and fleeting freedom. And yet, the festival always ends. The plaza empties, the mounds stand silent once more, and the drums quiet. Work resumes. Baskets are carried, fields tended, mounds built higher, and rituals remembered. The city returns to its relentless rhythm, as if the spectacle of devotion had been nothing more than a brief illusion. You carry on, carrying your basket of dirt, noticing how the ceremonies shape every other part of life: behavior, hierarchy, labor, and even survival itself. Festivals remind you that Cahokia is a city ruled not only by mounds and elite authority, but also by ritual, belief, and the collective heartbeat of its people. Because in Cahokia, ceremonies are not Okanavan. Nutrition plays a role too. Corn, beans, and squash provide sustenance, but deficiencies can weaken bodies, making them susceptible to infection. Malnutrition is subtle, slow, and often invisible until it is too late. The elite, with access to surplus food, fare better, but even they are not immune to epidemics or misfortune. Life here is equal parts endurance and chance. Illness also shapes labor and ritual. Sick individuals are often exempt from fieldwork or construction, though social pressure can force them back into tasks they should avoid. Ceremonies may be delayed, offerings adjusted, and neighborhoods on alert. A plague or epidemic is treated as both a medical and spiritual crisis, and the city mobilizes with urgency, fear, and superstition. You've seen neighbors murmur about omens while simultaneously preparing herbal remedies, blending belief and practicality. Preventive measures exist, but they are imperfect. Smoke from fires, basic hygiene, and isolation of the visibly sick help. But the dense city layout, shared water sources, and communal spaces make disease inevitable. You notice how even a small cough spreads rapidly, unseen until it affects multiple families. Survival requires vigilance, adaptation, and sometimes resignation. Death from illness is common. Families grieve quietly, burying the sick in accordance with ritual or practicality. Children, laborers, and the elderly are especially vulnerable. The city mourns collectively, yet moves forward, because life cannot pause for every tragedy. You've felt the weight of these losses while continuing your own labor, the constant reminder that your survival is never guaranteed. And yet, medicine, observation, and hope persist. You see people applying poultices, preparing teas, and whispering prayers, believing that care combined with skill, luck, and divine favor can keep the living alive. The city survives, in part, because of this quiet diligence, the delicate balance of human ingenuity and resilience in the face of fragility. Because in Cahokia, illness is never distant, never simple, and never purely medical. Survival depends on knowledge, vigilance, and stubborn persistence on the understanding that even amidst mounds, rituals, and bustling streets, the body is fragile, and life is always borrowed. You wake to the first light of dawn, and immediately feel the weight of the unseen. In Cahokia, the world is alive with spirits, forces, and patterns far beyond human control. Every mound, every river bend, every shadow of a tree carries meaning. And you, whether you believe it or not, are part of this cosmic web. The city is oriented according to celestial alignments. Mounds rise to mark the solstices, plazas align with the sun, and sacred spaces reflect an understanding of the cosmos you barely grasp. Priests and nobles explain these patterns, their gestures precise, their words imbued with authority. You carry baskets of soil, aware that every shovelful contributes to structures that map the heavens, or at least the city's interpretation of them. Spirits are everywhere. They inhabit the river, the fields, the forests, and even human-made structures. You notice small offerings left in corners, near hearths, or at the edges of paths, shells, pottery, food. They are gestures of respect, fear, and practicality. A neglected spirit can bring misfortune, illness, or failed crops, and the city treats these threats seriously, whether you understand them or not. The cycles of life and death are deeply spiritual. Mounds serve as both graves and cosmic markers. Burial practices, sacrifices, and rituals all reinforce the belief that the city exists in harmony, or must exist in harmony, with forces beyond human comprehension. Death is not an ending, but a transition, a return to the cosmic order. You carry soil, build mounds, and participate indirectly in these acts, your labor anchoring the living and honoring the dead. Priests mediate between humans and spirits. They interpret signs, perform rituals, and maintain cosmic balance. Their authority is immense, partly because they control knowledge few others possess. You've noticed how fear, respect, and ritual reinforce their power. Questioning them is risky. Observing silently is survival. You follow the rules, not necessarily because you believe, but because belief, or at least compliance, keeps you alive. Festivals punctuate the calendar, aligning with solar, lunar, and seasonal events. Corn planting, harvests, solstices, all are infused with ritual significance. Offerings and ceremonies are designed to maintain harmony, to ensure that humans do not anger the spirits or gods. And you, despite your exhaustion, witness, carry, and participate. The city pulses in rhythm with these cosmic cycles. Animals in nature hold spiritual significance too. Certain birds, mammals, and aquatic creatures are considered omens or guides. You notice how the flight of a bird or the movement of fish can be interpreted as advice or warning. Your life intersects with these interpretations. A misstep, a misunderstanding, or failure to heed a sign can ripple outward, affecting labor, social standing, or survival. Cosmology shapes morality, social behavior, and hierarchy. The city's rules, often framed as divine law, dictate human interactions. Obedience, labor, and ritual participation are not just social expectations, they are spiritual obligations. You learn quickly that breaking these rules risks more than punishment. It risks spiritual imbalance, which everyone fears. Even in doubt, belief is practical. You may not understand the full logic behind rituals or cosmology, but you participate because survival depends on it. The alignment of mounds, the cadence of festivals, the offerings of food and labor, all are ways to navigate a world that is vast, unpredictable, and inhabited by unseen forces. And so, you carry baskets of soil to the next mound, feeling the weight of both earth and cosmic significance. Every day, your labor anchors not only the city, but the spiritual order that surrounds it. In Cahokia, life, death, and belief are intertwined. A constant reminder that humans are never entirely in control, and perhaps never entirely meant to be. Because in Cahokia, survival is measured not just in labor or obedience, but in understanding or at least respecting the invisible forces that guide every aspect of existence. You might think Cahokia is self-contained, But the city's reach stretches far beyond the mounds, rivers, and plazas you navigate daily. Trade flows like an invisible current, connecting Cahokia to distant forests, mountains, and coasts. Every rare shell, polished stone, or copper piece tells a story of places you've never seen and people you'll never meet. Goods arrive via canoes on the Mississippi and its tributaries, or overland paths guarded and maintained by intermediaries. You see traders arrive with baskets of shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and mica from distant hills. Obsidian, volcanic in origin, travels hundreds of miles to reach the city, carried by hands as tired as yours, but with purposes equally vital. You watch silently, basket of soil in hand, aware that every piece of traded material is both practical and symbolic. Trade shapes social hierarchies. Nobles and priests control access to rare goods, using them to reward loyalty, enforce compliance, or display status. A piece of copper or shell is more than ornamentation. It is influence, prestige, and sometimes survival. The common people witness this exchange, learning that value extends beyond labor and that observation, timing, and negotiation are essential skills for those on the margins. Markets bustle with activity. Traders negotiate, barter, and sometimes flaunt exotic items to entice buyers. Corn, pottery, and local goods move outward, while distant treasures move inward. The air is thick with excitement, dust, and occasional tension. A poorly timed insult, a miscalculated price, or a broken promise can escalate quickly. You've learned to watch and listen, to follow the flow of human intent as much as the flow of goods. Long-distance trade is also a conduit for ideas, stories, and technology. You've heard whispers of far-off cities, strange customs, and tools that seem almost magical. New weaving techniques, hunting strategies, or ritual practices arrive alongside shells and copper. Knowledge travels the same routes as goods, shaping the city in subtle, persistent ways. You realize that Cahokia is a hub not just of labor, ritual, and agriculture, but of information, influence, and connectivity. Risk is ever present. Canoes can overturn, goods can be stolen, and disputes can erupt between rival traders. Delays ripple through the city, affecting everything from food security to ceremonial preparations. You carry your basket with an awareness that even a small disruption upstream can cascade down to you, impacting daily labor, access to resources, or social stability. Trade also dictates innovation. Pottery styles evolve to appeal to distant buyers, tool-making techniques improve, and logistical strategies adapt to ensure survival and efficiency. The city's very layout reflects this network. Plazas, paths, and storage spaces are designed not only for ritual or daily life, but to facilitate the movement of goods, the exchange of ideas, and the maintenance of alliances. And while nobles benefit most visibly, ordinary people sometimes gain through indirect participation. A gifted shell, a small surplus of food, or the opportunity to observe and learn from foreign techniques can elevate status, improve skill, or simply provide temporary advantage. You notice how the city subtly teaches that even those on the periphery can participate in broader networks, if they are attentive, patient, and careful. The river hums with activity. Canoes drift like dark shadows along its surface, carrying goods, people, and knowledge. You watch them pass. The legacy of Cahokia is both monumental and subtle. The mounds dominate the landscape, visible from miles away, marking the ingenuity, organization, and ambition of a civilization you can barely grasp. Yet the true legacy is less tangible. The social structures, labor networks, trade connections, rituals, and crafts that once defined daily life. These aspects leave traces not in grand monuments, but in the soil, the artifacts, and the quiet whispers of the past that reach you across time. Trade, once vibrant and expansive, has left its mark in shells, copper, and mica, scattered far from their sources. You notice the distant origins of these materials and realized that Cahokia was connected to a continent-wide network of human endeavor. Every piece tells a story of connection, ambition, and human curiosity. You carry soil, lift fragments, and witness the lingering influence of a city that once pulsed with life far beyond its borders. Craftsmanship endures, too. Pottery shards, carved posts, and ornaments reveal skill, aesthetic sensibility, and cultural values. Even in decay, these objects communicate with you. Messages of identity, belief, and artistry. The people of Cahokia, now long gone, reach across time through their creations, offering glimpses of their world, their priorities, and their humanity. Memory is preserved in ritual and structure. The alignment of mounds, plazas, and ceremonial spaces reflects cosmic understanding and social hierarchy. Even without the people who once animated them, these spaces maintain significance. You walk among them, carrying your baskets of imagination and observation, piecing together lives that were laborious, beautiful, fragile, and persistent. And then there are the lessons for those who come later. Cahokia demonstrates resilience, organization, creativity, and adaptation, but also vulnerability. Environmental pressures, social tensions, and external threats all contributed to decline. You see in these remnants a cautionary tale. Even monumental achievement is subject to forces beyond control. Human endeavor leaves traces, but it does not guarantee permanence. Children, women, laborers, artisans, priests, all contributed to this memory. Every life mattered, yet few are remembered individually. You realize that legacy is not just the visible, the monumental, or the celebrated. It is the ordinary, everyday endurance of countless individuals whose actions ripple forward in time, shaping what future generations can perceive and interpret. You lift your gaze to the horizon, imagining the city as it once was, bustling, chaotic, ritualized, and alive. And even though it is gone, you carry it with you, stitched into the land, the artifacts, and the stories whispered by the wind. Cahokia survives in memory, in legacy, and in the quiet endurance of human curiosity and labor. Because in the end, civilizations rise and fall, mounds erode, and rivers shift, but the echoes of human effort endure. Cahokia, though silent, teaches that memory is not just in texts or monuments. It is in the persistence of labor, belief, and imagination, waiting for someone like you to notice, reflect, and remember. You hear it before you see it. Drums, flutes, and rattles echoing across the plaza. Music is constant in Cahokia, shaping rituals, labor, and daily life. Children imitate rhythms, laborers tap tools in sync, and priests conduct ceremonies with precision guided by sound. Noise is never random. It communicates, coordinates, and reinforces social order. Drums announce the start of festivals, the approach of traders, or the completion of construction. Flutes and whistles carry signals along pathways and through neighborhoods. You notice how the rhythm of labor often mirrors ceremonial beats, as if the city itself marches in time to its own soundtrack. Even the river contributes, a constant murmur beneath the human pulse. Music isn't merely decoration. It reinforces hierarchy and ritual. Nobles and priests perform ceremonial songs, instructing the crowd without words. Observers understand cues instantly: when to kneel, when to clap, when to offer food. Even small errors disrupt social balance. You tap your fingers to the beat, subtly aware that one misstep might earn a reprimand or at least a stern glare. Children, apprentices, and commoners participate with small instruments, clapping or vocalizing. It's both training and entertainment, blending education with ritual. You watch the way novices mirror masters, learning the rhythm of work, play, and belief. Music, like labor, is repetition, endurance, and invisible power. Trade networks also transmit musical traditions. Shell rattles, carved whistles, and drums move across distances, carrying style, skill, and influence from distant cities. Cahokia's soundscape is shaped as much by the outside world as by its own internal culture. You realize that even your labor-lifting soil, tending fields, moving baskets, resonates within this broader auditory ecosystem. Music underscores fear, joy, and survival. Drums can signal danger or celebration. Flutes can calm spirits or inspire reverence. You notice how the same instruments play different roles depending on context, always linking human behavior to belief, hierarchy, and environmental awareness. Even in decline, sound persists. Fewer musicians, quieter plazas, but the memory of rhythm remains. You hear echoes in empty neighborhoods, the faint resonance of past ceremonies and labor. Music becomes a vessel for memory, carrying the heartbeat of a city that no longer thrives. And you, carrying your basket through these soundscapes, realize that Cahokia is orchestrated as much by noise as by architecture. Drums, flutes, and murmurs guide, control, and comfort a reminder that even invisible forces shape survival. Because in Cahokia, rhythm is both practical and spiritual, connecting labor, belief, and social order in a way that words alone cannot capture. You wake to the smell of wet soil, the river swollen beyond its usual banks. Weather in Cahokia is never neutral. Droughts, floods, and sudden storms dictate your day, your labor, and sometimes your survival. The Mississippi shapes life in ways no human decree or ritual can control. Flooding is both blessing and curse. Fields irrigate naturally, replenishing nutrients and supporting corn, beans, and squash. But too much water and crops drown. Storage pits fill with mud, and pathways turn to quagmires. You struggle through the muck, baskets heavy, realizing that your back bears more than soil it carries the weight of environmental whimsy. Droughts are equally brutal. Corn wilts, beans shrivel, and squash rots. Water shortages make hygiene and health precarious, while food scarcity heightens social tension. You watch neighbors quarrel over water, argue about whose field receives priority irrigation, and curse the sky. There is no rain insurance, no flood control system beyond collective effort, and definitely no modern convenience to ease suffering. The river itself is unpredictable. Its bends shift slowly but relentlessly, occasionally undermining houses, displacing families, or redirecting trade routes. You learn to read its patterns, noticing subtle changes in flow, color, and debris. Survival depends on observation and adaptation, even if luck plays the largest role. Seasonal variation dictates labor rhythms. Spring is planting, summer is tending, autumn is harvest, and winter is preparation. Storms can disrupt any stage. You carry baskets, repair levees, and work tirelessly, aware that months of effort can vanish overnight if nature decides to assert itself. Environmental stress also shapes city planning. Houses are elevated or built with drainage in mind. Storage pits are lined carefully to avoid flood damage. Paths and roads are reinforced, and communal labor ensures defenses against erosion and storms. The city's layout, labor patterns, and social structures reflect a constant negotiation with forces beyond human control. Yet these challenges also inspire ingenuity. Irrigation techniques, seasonal scheduling, and selective planting show a keen understanding of local ecology. You notice how humans adapt, observing patterns of soil fertility, rainfall, and river behavior. Survival requires both compliance with tradition and responsiveness to environmental cues, a delicate balance of knowledge and experience. Long-term climate changes ripple through generations. Droughts that last years, floods that recur with increasing intensity, these stress social order, trade networks, and ritual practices. You notice how scarcity heightens hierarchy, intensifies labor, and shifts priorities. Every basket of soil, every planted seed, and every offering to the gods carries stakes far beyond your immediate comprehension. Even rituals reflect environmental awareness. Offerings, festivals, and ceremonies often coincide with seasonal events, celebrating successful harvests or appeasing forces believed to govern rain, sun, and soil fertility. Participation is not optional. It is survival encoded in tradition. You kneel, carry baskets, and pray silently, aware that both divine favor and practical labor determine whether you eat tomorrow. And so, you continue your work, balancing soil, water, and weather, aware that the city's heartbeat is inseparable from the whims of climate. Survival, hierarchy, and ritual are all calibrated against the environment's unpredictability. Cahokia thrives or falters, not merely through human effort, but in constant negotiation with forces vast and indifferent. Because in Cahokia, nature is not a backdrop, it is a participant. Floods, droughts, storms, and shifting rivers dictate the rhythm of labor, ritual, and survival. And you, sweating and shivering in equal measure, are caught in its relentless sway. You carry your baskets along the familiar paths, but the world beyond Cahokia is not so predictable. Other cities exist rivals, neighbors, and ritual and medicine intertwine. Offerings, prayers, and ceremonies are performed in tandem with practical care. Healers, priests, and laborers work together, or at least side by side attempting to restore balance. You participate quietly, observing that human action, belief, and hope are as much tools against illness as herbs or isolation. Even ordinary precautions are inconsistent. Water sources are shared, hygiene is rudimentary, and crowds are unavoidable. Disease exploits every weakness. You move through neighborhoods, noticing how a single sick child or weakened adult affects multiple families, their labor, and the city's stability. Death is inevitable and constant. Funerals are practical, ritualized, and sober affairs. Families mourn quietly while life continues. You carry baskets, participate in labor, and witness the city adapt, resilient yet fragile, as disease quietly reshapes its population and priorities. And so, you learn vigilance, observation, and patience. Every cough, rash, or fever is a reminder that life here is borrowed, fragile, and dependent on more than just hard work. In Cahokia, survival is a combination of labor, ritual, skill, and luck, and disease is an ever-present variable you cannot fully control. Because in Cahokia, illness is a silent ruler, shaping society, hierarchy, labor, and ritual in ways as constant and inevitable as the Mississippi itself. And you, weary and cautious, are both subject and observer. You crouch over a fragment of pottery, dirt clinging to its edges, and realize it's more than broken clay. Each shard, each carved stone, each polished shell carries intention, skill, and history. Cahokia communicates through objects, leaving traces of labor, belief, and social order scattered across the landscape. Pottery dominates daily life. Cooking vessels, storage jars, and ceremonial pots are crafted with care, often bearing patterns or symbols whose meanings are layered and subtle. You notice how a slightly uneven curve or a misplaced mark could signify inexperience or, worse, disrespect. Every artifact, no matter how mundane it seems, signals something about its maker, its owner, and its context. Carved posts, effigies, and statues are more than decoration. They mark ceremonial spaces, memorialize important events, and encode cosmology. You pass a carved figure whose intricate patterns reflect the city's spiritual beliefs. It's both a visual guide and a statement of status. Observing it, you understand that survival and social cohesion are intertwined with the symbolic language of material culture. Adornment is also critical. Shell necklaces, copper pendants, and carved bone ornaments communicate rank, achievement, and affiliation. You notice the way nobles wear them during festivals, signaling power without a word. Ordinary people participate too, subtly marking their identity through smaller or less ostentatious objects. Every object carries social weight, and misplacement or misuse can have consequences. Trade amplifies material culture. Exotic materials arrive from distant lands. Mica from hills far away, copper from lakes hundreds of miles north, shells from the Gulf Coast. Craftsmen transform these raw materials into objects that symbolize cosmology, authority, and connection. You realize that your labor, moving soil, and building mounds, indirectly facilitates the creation and display of these artifacts. Children learn through objects. They imitate adults in carving, weaving, or shaping clay. Mistakes are tolerated in practice, but not in public. You watch a young apprentice break a shard, sigh, and start again. Skill, patience, and observation are instilled early, ensuring that the city's material knowledge continues across generations. Even mundane tools carry meaning. Stone axes, grinding stones, and hunting implements reflect both practicality and ingenuity. Their design improves over generations, adapting to local resources and labor demands. You carry your basket past workshops and notice the rhythm of creation. Repetition, correction, and refinement are embedded in every tool and object. Material culture also mediates ritual. Ceremonial objects, masks, and decorated vessels serve both spiritual and social purposes. You participate in processions or offerings, handling objects carefully, aware that each placement and gesture has significance beyond immediate function. Objects become conduits of communication, power, and memory. Decay and abandonment do not erase meaning. Shards remain, posts endure, and impressions of paths, hearths, and storage pits persist. Archaeologists and observers, centuries later, will reconstruct the city through these remnants. You realize that Cahokia's story is etched in its artifacts, silent yet eloquent, carrying messages of labor, belief, and social cohesion far beyond the lives of individual participants. And so, every basket you carry, every stone you move, and every tool or ornament you handle connects you to a broader system of meaning. Artifacts are the city's voice, telling a story that survives collapse, decline, and the passage of centuries. In Cahokia, objects are not merely things. They are memory, identity, and survival encoded in material form. Because in Cahokia, the city speaks through what it leaves behind, and you, observing and participating, are part of a dialogue that stretches across time, linking labor, ritual, and human ingenuity in ways both subtle and profound. You carry your basket along the palisades, listening to the creak of wooden walls and the distant call of watchmen. Cahokia is a city of labor, ritual, and mounds, but also of vigilance. Threats are never abstract. Rival cities, raiders, and internal unrest require constant attention to defense. Survival depends on both skill and preparedness. Wooden palisades encircle neighborhoods and plazas, a simple but effective deterrent. Towers provide vantage points, where sentries scan the horizon for danger. You notice the way labor contributes directly to defense, digging trenches, reinforcing walls, and stacking soil around foundations. Every mound you build or maintain is not only ceremonial, but also potentially strategic, giving height advantage for observation. Weapons are practical and symbolic. Bows, spears, clubs, and stone-tipped arrows are crafted with care, stored for readiness. Training is constant. Young warriors learn to wield tools with precision, practicing strikes, positioning, and coordination. You pass by these exercises, noticing the tension in the air and the pride etched into the faces of instructors. Mistakes can cost lives, so attention and discipline are paramount. Internal vigilance is equally important. Neighborhoods watch one another, laborers monitor newcomers, and rumors travel faster than messages. Suspicion is a constant companion, even among allies. You carry soil past houses and alleys, aware that minor disputes, grievances, or gossip can escalate into conflict if ignored. Stability depends on observation and subtle social negotiation. Warfare, when it occurs, is brutal and immediate, Raids disrupt labor, steal resources, and can destabilize neighborhoods. You hear the drums of warning, see smoke rising in the distance, and understand that the city's very layout paths, plazas, mounds, can aid in both defense and retreat. Coordination is as essential as strength. Alliances play a strategic role. Diplomacy with neighboring cities sometimes prevents conflict. A well-placed gift, a marriage alliance, or timely tribute can avert raids. You notice how leaders manipulate trade, ritual, and ceremony to maintain security. Even your labor indirectly contributes. The more robust the mounds and plazas, the stronger the city appears to potential aggressors. Fortifications adapt to environment and threat. Elevated mounds, trenches, and strategic palisades exploit natural features, rivers, swamps, and high ground. You observe how engineers and laborers coordinate, reinforcing vulnerable points and using soil and wood to create both defensive and ceremonial structures. Labor, ritual, and security are intertwined. Training is relentless. Warriors practice archery, formation drills, and strategy. Observation, coordination, and endurance matter as much as weapon skill. You see how children and apprentices watch, learning tactics, signals, and defensive techniques. Skill transmission ensures that survival strategies persist even under stress. Even minor skirmishes ripple through the city. Labor slows, ceremonies adjust, and social hierarchies shift temporarily. You carry your basket, mindful that your role, however small, supports both survival and the city's symbolic strength. Every shovel of soil, every repaired path, every reinforced mound contributes to a larger system of defense. And so, life in Cahokia is never entirely safe. Defense is a constant, both visible in walls and weapons, and invisible in observation, discipline, and social awareness. You move through the city carrying soil, aware that labor, vigilance, and cooperation are as essential to survival as corn, water, or ritual. Because in Cahokia, warfare is not just battle, it is preparation, coordination, and endurance. The city thrives, or falters depending on its readiness, and you, a small part of the vast system, are both participant and observer in the delicate balance of survival. You wake to the sound of low chanting drifting across the plaza. Spiritual leaders, priests, and ritual specialists dominate both ceremony and influence in Cahokia. Their power is subtle, pervasive, and woven into every aspect of life. You carry your basket, silently observing, aware that their authority shapes your labor, your status, and even your survival. Priests maintain cosmic order. They interpret omens, oversee rituals, and mediate between the human and spirit worlds. You notice the weight of their role. Success ensures prosperity. Failure invites misfortune. Offerings of food, baskets, there's a strange beauty in this continuity. You see children imitating adults, apprentices learning crafts, neighbors cooperating, and leaders negotiating. Labor, skill, and ritual intertwine to form a complex, delicate ecosystem. You carry your baskets and realize that human persistence is not always visible in grandeur. Often it is quiet, repetitive, and unnoticed until someone pauses to observe. Even absence teaches lessons. Empty plazas, eroded mounds, and scattered artifacts instruct as vividly as thriving neighborhoods once did. You sense that Cahokia's story is as much about decline, adaptation, and memory as it is about prosperity, construction, or ritual. You feel both awe and melancholy, recognizing that human endeavor leaves permanent marks even in impermanence. And so, you carry your basket one last time, aware that the city's heartbeat continues in echoes, soil, and stories. Cahokia's endurance is not a monument to permanence, but to persistence, labor, belief, and observation woven across time. You realize that survival is measured not only in lifespans, but in the traces we leave for others to notice, interpret, and remember. Because in Cahokia, memory, labor, and endurance converge. Life is relentless, fragile, and sometimes silent, yet it resonates across centuries. And you, standing atop the mound, are both witness and participant in a city that no longer exists but continues to teach, caution, and inspire those who pause to notice.